Clean hit, oh, into the clean hit DP. Yeah, beautiful stuff after that success. And with the super for the wall break, giving positive bonus, allowing for some nasty RC pressure. But we're going to go for the air dash into the safe jump. Oki, meaty, full trap into the full chase with the 50 here, into the kill with the Panda to bring us. Did you get any of that? Fighting game terminology is very important within the fighting game community to understand what is going on within the fighting game. Some of it can be a bit stupid, some of it can be a bit silly, and some of it can be very confusing. What's up, fellas? My name is Panda, and today we're going to be diving into a funner type of topic where we talk about terminology within the fighting game scene and how it's used and how it affects some of it's silly, how some of it's fun, and some could be changed. But yeah, I've been a nerd for fighting games for ages. Ever since I was a wee baby, I've been playing these games for ages. So I'm coming in with a viewpoint of I've played almost everything, right? Maybe not to the level of like Daigo Umihara, but I played all these games to a pretty solid point of understanding. So I do think I've got a pretty good viewpoint coming into this video in terms of talking about its terminology and how some of it can be confusing and some of it should be changed and how some of it is a little charming in ways. Let's get started with the first one, and this is a global term, applies to a ton of other fighting games, and that's meaties. When it comes to meaties, the thing that I find very interesting about it is why do we use the term meaty? Knockdowns give iframes, right? So basically you can't attack the opponent while they're in their lying down state, but once they get up, there's a frame where they can start being active again, aka press a button or block. And when this happens, you want to hit them with a meaty. So you start to think to yourself, is it like meaty as in like I'm meeting someone? So we're making meaty a bit easier to say compared to meeting them to that point. But no, then you realize it's spelled meaty as in like a slab of meat. So I'm hitting them with my meat. Phrasing. Where did this come from? Who made this up? And you find out back in the NorCal scene didn't like using this either. We're talking like 2004, a very long time ago. Whoever invented this is chuckling to themselves, realizing we're hitting people with our meaty attacks. We're just meatying all over them. Phrasing. Now on to phrasing, we'll be talking about Japanese phrasing. Now this is a one that makes a ton of sense. Of course, when it comes to games that are made over in the East that are also fighting games, we would adopt a bunch of their terms. It just makes sense, right? For example, whenever the French came to England and taken over back in the medieval period, we got a bunch of French words added to our English dictionary. Words like magnificent or peasant are within the English dictionary and are often used among the online community to make fun of people. You are French. So it makes sense if fighting games will do the same. So in this case, instead of saying wake up offensive pressure, we say okizemi. We also say oki for short. And you know what? That makes it so much easier to say. It's 2 syllables, oki, very quick to say, and it covers a broad spectrum of tools. So for example, doing a safe jump, which is a safe attack on the opponent that lets you bait tools. Going for a 50-50 on the oki, or going for some pressure on the oki for a guaranteed turn. This term is really understandable if you're within the community. Sure, it'll confuse you at first as a newbie, but once you get to know it, it's a very well used term. So this is one of those ones where I'd say skill issue if you didn't know how to go about it. But once you know how to go about it, you're fine. It's a great term to use. And the other thing that's great about this term, it can be applied to essentially every fighting game besides platform fighters. However, when it comes to Japanese phrasing, there's one word I just disagree with, and I don't understand why we use it, and that's a bari. This has been a recent word that we have adopted into our language as a fighting game community. It refers to doing a mash out option on defense to escape fake pressure. So for example, I abaried with my jab to escape the fake Garuda pressure. The thing about bari is that it doesn't really cover much else, right? We're just saying we're doing a mash, but we're saying it dead fancy, and I feel like that's why we've taken up the term. We've taken up a bari to sound more professional as commentators or as a community. There's nothing that a bari says that mashing doesn't already cover. Also, the fact that they're both very simple to say, and a mash and a bari are both one syllable, so you can't even make the argument if one is easier to say the other, like oki and wake up offensive pressure. So this is one word you'll never see me using on commentary, and I'm just gonna say it right. As a masher, I know a masher when I see one. So this is the part I slightly dread because the Tekken community have one shared brain cell, and I should know because I'm a king player. So when it comes to Tekken, there's one problem with its terminology, right? It does my head, and some of it is a little off. If you're not a part of the community, you're fully confused. If you're a part of the community, you are confused. And I just want to say, when I come with this opinion, I try to take this game seriously since 8+ years ago, right? Been playing this game ever since I was a baby. Since I was a baby, I played this game, okay? So, this is coming from a viewpoint of a fan of the series, okay? This is where you need to understand this is coming from. This isn't a Joe Schmo who picked up the game twice during the Tekken 8 Season 2 patch and enjoyed the game. Michael Murray, what the hell? So, when I say this is where the viewpoint's coming from. And to get into it, in Tekken, if you're in crouch and then you start to extend your knees to recover from crouch, you start rising up from your crouch to go into standing. And while you're rising up, it lets you access different tools from this rising position. So when you block a low, you do your rising tools to punish that blocked low. For example, Jin rising 2. However, do you know what the Tekken community calls this state? Do you know what they call this state where you're rising up while standing? While standing! While standing's neutral! That's fine for you anime players. That's the star in the Tekken menu. Standing is a neutral state. Why are we saying while standing? That makes no sense. Why is rising called standing? The Tekken community often say, oh, well, we call WR while running and WS while standing, so we don't get them confused. How about this? I've got a solution for you, and it makes 100 times more sense than that dumb caveman thought process that you just had. WS, change it to while sprinting, because they're sprinting during that animation. They're not running, they're sprinting, right? So WS while sprinting and WR while rising. This completely changes it while keeping your dumb notations in order. As someone who's been playing the game for 8+ years, this still trips me up on commentary, because in the game they call it while rising, and all the newbies that are playing the game are also calling it while rising. And when I brought this topic up to C4, who is a fighting game commentator for almost over a decade at this point, also agreed with me on the exact same point that I told him.
Honestly, WS should have been while sprinting. That actually makes way more sense. While sprinting, yeah, swap and rands. Make the current WR while sprinting, and then make that go back to while rising.
In-game terminology will always be difficult to learn. This is everything, this is every practice. Terminology will always be a little difficult to learn. But this is just confusing and bad. And this is the one problem I have with Tekken notations. Besides that fucking star. Okay, so this one's a little different, right? These ones are a little bit more charming. I actually quite like this one, and it's from the Smash Brothers. And that's essentially how, despite the fact that Smash Brothers wants to be considered a fighting game, and the community always say that, they use completely different terminology, but I kind of love their terminology. For example, a TOD, or a TOD as we call it, a touch of death as the initial stand for, they call it a zero of death, because they start on 0 and then they die. I quite like that. Instead of it calling a mirror match to refer to you fighting the same character as each other, they call it a Ditto match because of the Pokemon Ditto. Again, I quite like that. I think that's cute. And a pixie character in those games are usually referred to as floaties, because they die quicker when they get hit, and they tend to have very good movement, making them hard to hit because they float about. Kind of like a pixie character, and how they're very hard to hit grounded because they have a small body. If I'm honest, I quite like this. I like these terminologies, because if you're a fan of Nintendo, you automatically get it. You know what a Ditto is, right? You see their health go from 0 to gone. That makes sense, right? And then when you see them floating about, yeah, they are a floaty, right? It all makes sense. I'm a big fan of the Smash terminology, if I'm honest. I'm a massive fan. But there's one problem. There is one problem. Why do they call it a sex kick? Sex kick is where essentially you do this long, very active aerial normal. It tends to be a nair, short for neutral air button. They just call it sex kicks. I don't know why. If you do a very active neutral jump aerial, they'll just call it a sex kick. So we should call Zangief's crossbody the sex slam. There was a fella called Matt Deasy who essentially coined the term, and it just stuck. It just stuck. People liked saying it. And you know what? Maybe I should do that in commentary. I'm gonna keep that in mind. I'm gonna try to coin some terms. Next, I want to talk about tag fighters. Right? They're super unique. They're very different from every other fighting game, and a little in line with anime games, except they take those anime mechanics and crank it up to 1,000,000. But the thing about their terminology is that it's also over the top like the games. For example, when you hit an assist and the main character, well, that's referred to as a happy birthday because of the gracious gift they give you, as it says in the FTC glossary. And you know what? That's pretty funny. Makes sense. Rare occasion, happy birthday, here's your gift. But when you hit 3 of them, they call it a Merry Christmas. And I'm guessing because it's more of the gift, you know, they're giving you plenty. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas! You just got 3 men in a combo. I don't know what religions we were taught about Merry Christmas and all that over in America, but like, I didn't know Jesus Christ had foot dives. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. I'm confused. Overall, fun terminology, but as a spectator, I could imagine you definitely get confused if you heard, well, happy birthday, wombo combo. I just wanted to do this as a fun idea. I'm still figuring out the grappler video I wanted to do. You know what? It's interesting, right? We don't think about fighting game terminology. We just don't. We just sort of say it 9 times out of 10. We say these things, right? We just sort of say these things. And I think it's interesting to think about the deeper meaning. Like, why are we out here saying sex gigs? Why are we out here saying while standing? I'm not over that. It's a fun talking point. It's a very, very fun talking point. And I want you guys to tell me what you think is weird terminology that you just couldn't get over. These are the ones that really stuck with me. And I do like the Smash ones, I will say that. It was very cute. It's very cute. I'm a fan. I'm a fan. But yeah, guys, peace out and have a good one. Tell me your funky terminology, and yeah, soon.